What's going on, guys? K-Pine here and welcome back. And in this video I'll be featuring Gallade in the Open Great League. Gallade being given access to Psycho Cut is a major upgrade from its previous fast move of Confusion. Psycho Cut allows Gallade to get to Leaf Blades after only 8 turns and close combat after 10. This thing is now lightning fast, hits like a truck, and has an outstanding set of charge moves. What's its drawback? Well, it's extremely glassy. You give this Pokemon a shield advantage, much like that of Shadow Charizard, and well, dare I say, it's probably the best sweeper in the game. And a quick PSA, I'm running the non-Shadow variant just because I don't have a Shadow, but do yourself a favor and run the Shadow if you have one, it's just objectively better. As for the team, I'm running my newly built Annihilate, I know, a little late to the party, on the safe swap to bait out any flyers or fairies. As for the lead, Empoleon works well to deal with the weaknesses the fighters have, however, Charger Bug is a massive problem for the team. So if you do want to run it, I'd recommend something more along the lines of a Lickitung or a Registeel lead, so the Charger Bug isn't that much of a threat. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, into the first battle, we lead Empoleon into Shadow Dragonair. Empoleon is an absolute wall to the energy from the Shadow Dragonair, as anything it throws will be resisted. We're going to let this through, as again, this isn't going to do much damage to us, and our opponent goes for an Aqua Tail. That is the wrong move to throw from my opponent there, unfortunately. In neutrals, in situations where both Body Slam and Aqua Tail do the same amount of damage, Body Slam is still a little bit more efficient, even though Aqua Tail did get the buff this season. My opponent is going to swap into a Lantern. I'm going to meet it with the Gallade. Leaf Blade number 1 does massive damage. I'm going to overfarm some and go for Leaf Blade number 2. And with a Shadow Dragonair in the lead, Lantern in the back, I'm expecting the third Pokemon to be Skarmory at this point. So I know that I can just let that move go on the Gallade and instead go for a ton of energy on the Annihilate, as both the Annihilate and the Empoleon are going to be my keys to victory in this game. See what my opponent wants to bring in here. They're waiting out their clock and they bring in the Shadow Dragonair. So I'm going to go for this Ice Punch right away to get rid of the Dragonair or force their final shield. It gets rid of the Dragonair, and if it's a Skarmory in the back, I am just in a winning position, which it is, because I'm going to be able to reach the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to do massive damage to the Skarmory. We're going to swap into our Empoleon, get to the back-to-back Hydro Cannons, of which first one will get the shield from the Skarm, and the second one will take it out. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Empoleon into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Kind of a tough lead for us to start with, since they do have access to Draw Run. So I plan on swapping out into my Annihilate and either getting Switch advantage to then threaten with the close combats, or if I lose Switch, to get an energy advantage so I'll be able to outpace the Hydros. But my opponent makes it extremely easy for me. We both simul swap. They save swap into Shadow Machamp, I save swap into Annihilate, and I just go for the counter down. I give up a shield there to respect the potential payback, but of course they're not running payback. So a little bit of unfortunate shield, but I do leave with a ton of energy to start firing off at this Poliwrath, and it seems that my opponent's team is just so extremely weak to this Annihilate. Annihilate putting on an absolute clinic this game, surviving that Icy Wind, getting both shields from the Poliwrath, as well as reaching a third Shadow Ball to take out the Wrath, where we can now swap into the Gallade and up a shield. There is absolutely nothing stopping this close combat from landing, and my opponent concedes the match. GG's. Next battle, going up against a Jellicent Lead. We're going to stay in here and go for the Drill Peck after 7 Steel Wings. As for a 2-turn move user versus a 3-turn move user, throwing after 1, 4, or 7 fast moves is on good timing. We're going to let this go. Hopefully our opponent baits with the Surf, but they don't. They full send the Shadow Ball, and we are able to hang on and make it to one last Drill Peck. I'm actually desperately hoping my opponent no-shields this because my back line doesn't necessarily want to see a healthy Jellicent. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hard swap into my Gallade. I don't want them to get too much of an energy lead. And now they swap into a Lickitung, and this right here is a prime example of where the Shadow version is going to help you immensely. Look how much damage this close combat does. That almost one-shots the Lickitung, and unfortunately, I kind of needed it to one-shot the Lickitung, of which the Shadow is capable of doing. So while the non-Shadow can work well in some situations just because of its lightning fast pacing, dropping that Shadow damage bonus, as you'll see, is very costly when you need to nuke the bulkier mons like Lickitung or potentially a Registeel. As if I was able to get that one shot there in the close combat, leaving with a Leaf Blade against this Jellicent to force the final shield would have been absolutely crucial and my key to victory in the game, but of course, as you'll see by them having a Basti in the back, where I force that final shield with the Leaf Blade, I knock out the Jelly with the Ice Punch, and I'm still plenty enough healthy, would still be plenty enough healthy on the Annihilate to deal with the Bastiodon. But again, if you have that Shadow Gallade, please do yourself a favor and build that one instead of the regular. GG's to my opponent, well played. Next battle, Empoleon against Clodsire. If they're on Poison Sting, this is a fantastic lead. If they are on Mud Shot, it's still a pretty positive lead. So my opponent's going to swap into that Sableye. We're going to fire off this Hydro Cannon right away. We're actually going to stay in because we don't really have the best answer to the Sableye. And we're going to play for switch advantage. So we're going to load up, go for the Hydro Cannon on the CMP tie, which your opponent does lose. If they double shield, we'll double shield and go for our third Hydro Cannon as soon as we get it, which again will be on the CMP tie. And for this to happen, it's very important that if they save swap a Sableye, you throw your Hydro Cannon instantly to take advantage of that one turn desync your opponent has from swapping. At this point, I am going to swap out to save my Empoleon to reach a Hydro Cannon against that Clodsire. And by swapping out, I also have the chance to get my Gallade on the Greninja if they decide to swap out, of which a Leaf Blade would absolutely destroy it. But here in this situation, I do know I'm only one off another move, and I don't want the Greninja to reach a Hydro Cannon against my Glade, so I'm going to bring in my Empoleon, go for the Drill Peck to knock out the Greninja, and here I will be able to get to the Hydro Cannon on the CMP tie to the Clodsire. Hydro Cannon will land, and from here Gallade just closes out this match. And fun fact with Gallade, in situations where Leaf Blade is neutral and close combat is resisted, or Leaf Blade is super effective and close combat is neutral, so a one stage difference, if you're only going to get to one move, go for the close combat. Close combat does do slightly more damage than the Leaf Blade, so that's why I go for close combat here. I'm going to get to one move, go for the harder hitting one, as well as if you're going to make it close combat that's going to KO, why not go for it? Next battle, Empoleon against a Skarmory Lead. We're going to overfarm and we're going to let them throw first. If they go for a Brave Bird, our Hydro Cannon will now one shot. If they go for a Sky Attack, we can just go for the double Hydro Cannon anyways. Crucial to let them throw first. If you throw a Hydro Cannon first, this allows them to freely go for a Brave Bird with no punishment, as you'll then have to go for a second Hydro Cannon. So in an Empoleon versus Skarmory matchup, always let them throw first. My opponent does want to go play for switch advantage, of which I'll let him do. I want to save the shields for Gallade, as Gallade with the shield advantage, we know how dangerous it is, as well as get an energy advantage on my Annihilate, of which, again, energy advantage Annihilate is fantastic at getting shields. And at this point, you'll see right there, we get the final shield for my opponent. I'm just going to let 2-shield Gallade go to town. And now here's another instance where having the non-Shadow Gallade is going to hurt me. A close combat will not KO a non-Shadow Dragonair from here. So I'm going to have to go for a Leaf Blade and then a Close Combat. If I had the Shadow, I could just go straight for the Close Combat to eviscerate that Dragonair. So I go for the Leaf Blade, then the Close Combat. And fortunately, we are healthy enough to reach a Leaf Blade against this Whiscash to take it out. And Gallade showing what Gallade does best, sweeping opponents' back lines with that shield advantage. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Empoleon into Talonflame. Honestly, this is a fairly neutral matchup. It's positive for us in the 0-1 shield, but if your opponent decides to play it out to the 2 shields, Talonflame can actually win the 2 shield scenario by boosting up those Incinerates. So I will shield up the first Flame Charge, go for the next Hydro Cannon before they reach their second Flame Charge. This will get the final shield from my opponent. Now I'm gonna hard swap into my Annihilate. And this Talonflame is gonna be quite the problem for my team here. Fortunately, my opponent does not swap out to catch the Shadow Ball, so we win the CMP tie. If they did swap out to catch the Shadow Ball on something like a Lickitung, that would have been absolutely terrible. Here, my opponent actually makes a little bit of a misplay. Perhaps they lost count of the energy on my Annihilate, as if they stayed in with that Shadow Victory Bell, they would have been able to get the Razor Leaf down before I would have been able to reach an Ice Punch. But by swapping out, that allows me to get to a Shadow Ball and inflict massive damage onto this Bastiodon. And from here, this game's pretty much over, because I can bring my Empoleon in, force the Bastiodon to throw energy, and now I can just load up on energy to right before the Bastiodon reaches their second move, go for the Leaf Blade to take out the Basti, and while Close Combat is resisted, this is a Shadow Vic we're going up against. Close Combat lands, does massive damage to the Shadow Vic. Unfortunately, one more Psycho Cut will be enough to take it out. Again, another downside to not having the Shadow Gallade. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Empoleon into Sandslash. So like last time, we are going to safe swap into that Annihilate, and we bait out a Shadow Feraligatr. Pretty good, had to bait this out as well, as Gallade would get destroyed by those Shadow Claws. So we're going to load up on energy, fire off this Ice Punch bait right before they reach another move. Fortunately, we do get the shield, and we get the CMP tie to the next Ice Punch. This won't be enough to take out the Feraligatr, but it will do some nice damage to put it in farm down range for our Empoleon. So we're going to let that Hydro Cannon go. Annihilate did its job, and Empoleon is going to get the perfect Steel Wing down. Our opponent doesn't let that happen. They bring in a Shadow Lone Sandslash. We get the shield with the Hydro Cannon, and you already know what that means. It's Gallade sweep time. We can shield this Ice Punch, fire off the Close Combat on the CMP tie to their next move. Down goes a Slash. See what my opponent wants to come in with. They bring in the Feraligatr, hoping that they can reach a Hydro Cannon, but they do not. The Psycho Cut KOs the Feraligatr, and from here, one Leaf Blade is enough to take out the Annihilate. One Leaf Blade does half damage to Annihilate, and they play to the CMP tie on my second Leaf Blade as we take it out. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Empoleon into Shadow Hypno. I haven't seen one of these in a while in the Open GreatLeague, but with all the water types around, having access to Thunder Punch, I could see it being an interesting pick. So we're going to load up on energy, make sure to throw our Hydro Cannon in the middle of their Confusion for good timing. As a 2-turn user against a 4-turn user, you want to throw after 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9 iterations of your fast move. But here, I played a little risky. I actually throw it on the CMP tie to their Thunder Punch, expecting them to throw it right away, which they do. And we actually get their final shield. So from here, I'm going to commit my final shield because I don't want to have to take Hypno Confusion damage on either my Annihilate or my Gallade. So I'm going to load up on energy again, fire off this Hydro Cannon before they reach the next Thunder Punch. And here they bring in a Feraligatr. And this is a pretty big misplay on my part. I decided to go for the Drill Peck. What I should have done instead is stored that Hydro Cannon and then swapped into my Annihilate to bait out that Flyer or Fairy type user. And by storing that energy, it could go to better use against my opponent's third Mon, as opposed to going for a Drill Peck against that Feraligatr. And as we'll see here with the Talonflame, having that Hydro Cannon would have been extremely useful. But this game isn't over yet. If I manage my energy right on the Gallade, I will be able to reach a Leaf Blade against the Feraligatr to take it out as well. Here, I'm thinking the Feraligatr is 4 Shadow Claws away from their Hydro Cannon, so I go for Leaf Blade right away, knowing that I will win the CMP tie, but they're only 3. So if I threw one more Psycho Cut against a Talonflame, play to the CMP tie, which I do win, I would have been able to reach another Leaf Blade against the Feraligatr and flip that matchup. Fortunately, I didn't though. GG's to my opponent, well played. Next battle, another Shadow Dragonair lead that is staying in as well. I always like to overfarm because we get to the Drill Peck and the Body Slam / Aqua Tail at the same time. So if your opponent throws right away, they will give you a free Steel Wing for free. They'll give you a Steel Wing for free, allowing you to then outpace to the second move, to the second Body Slam Aqua Tail or Drill Peck Hydro Cannon if they end up committing that shield. So again, I like to overfarm in case they throw on alignment to give you that advantage. And in the back, they do have a Trevenant, which we are able to bait out with the Annihilate. Shield up the Seed Bomb, go for this Ice Punch to force the final shield from my opponent. And they will get a Shadow Claw down, but this is okay. We baited out the Trevenant so the Gallade does not have to see it. And bring in the Empoleon, go for the Drill Peck. We lose the CMP tie, but that is fine as we give up our final shield and this Drill Peck will land to take care of that Trevenant. Or bring it down very low, and in comes a Vigoroth. Vigoroth will fire off the Body Slam. We are perfectly okay to survive that and go for this close combat on the CMP tie. Goodbye Vigoroth, and then 2 more Psycho Cuts is enough to take care of the Trevenant. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Empoleon into Skarmory. So like I said last time, in playing out the Empoleon versus Skarmory matchup, make sure they are the ones to throw first. So we are going to keep farming up on energy. And we're at about 2.5 Hydro Cannons at this point before our opponent decides to throw, which they end up going for the Sky Attack. So we're going to throw our Hydro Cannon right away. This will land or get a shield. Ends up getting a shield. So we're going to go for another Hydro Cannon right here to bring them deep into the red. And at this point, I'm fine letting this go, getting energy on that Annihilate, as well as setting up Gallade with a shield advantage. Opponent does have a Swampert in the back, so you already know the game plan. Fire off the Shadow Ball, get that final shield, and now swap into the Gallade to close out the match, as they have a Carbink in the back. And this Gallade is gonna go to town against my opponent. 2 Leaf Blades from the non-Shadow Gallade is not quite enough to take out the Carbink. So we are going to fire off the second one. And at this point, throw 8 more Psycho Cuts. Commit a shield right here. Even if they bait with the Rock Slide, there's absolutely nothing my opponent can do at this point. I can just throw 3 more Psycho Cuts, get to the back-to-back Leaf Blades. This one will take out the Carbink, and the second one, oh, this will be more than enough to take out the Swampert. This would take out a whole family of Swamperts at that. As Gallade closes that matchup strong. GG's to my opponent. Gallade adds a very nice depth to the GreatLeague meta that's completely overrun with water types. Its lightning fast pacing and brutal damage output is balanced out by the fact that it can't really take a hit. But do not sleep on the glassy nature of this Pokemon, because if you do, it will make you pay. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.